Hello, welcome. It's 420. But because that according to the four different forms, the growing, the moving, and last the human being, or that and that different type of human, and that's the human being that was made from from the dust around the earth. And it was all gathered together into the form of the human being and blown into life, which is a way of saying how the soul came into explain, in particular for Ilan, who asked me this question. And it's a good way to because I'd mentioned before how the human being was made actually from two worlds of women. We understand the one man, where he came from, God made the man. Where did the two women come from? And they were there before man. So here's what happened. That the universe, was made from the black hole. I've explained this previously, and all the stars went out, and everything went out, and then in our solar system, God decided that's the place where God will be known in low. That was God's desire. And this is going to be low. And what's going to be low about it? It's going to be physical life. Everything else is spiritual. And the lowest part of that kind of spiritual life is found in the planet Mars. And from a primordial interaction between Jupiter and Mars was blown off the crust of Mars, and which made the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, and brought life into Mars. And this is considered a woman. Preceding Earth, preceding man. And all the animals come from there. And one of the signs of it is an interesting sign that it says like the lower 7 parts of life in the previous world, called tohu, confusion. And it was confusion because everything was independent. And this spark of life created what would later come down and give life to the animals. And the human and the woman, she is like mother of life. And the human being, interesting, we live on the planet called Tevel, and Tevel is a term used for when human beings and animals have sex. Why would our planet be called such a thing? And the reason is because the human being is a collusion of animal and human. We have animal instincts and we have a human soul. We actually have an animal soul too. We have a human soul, and we're both trying to live together in the same body in the earth. And this is a sign that when we were first created, that we were created man and woman. It says that anyways, but that's what it means. I like man and woman, that the spirit of woman and the spirit of life was inside of man, separate from his own spirit. And they were one, and it was an androgynous being that was able to conceive life and give birth. Unfortunately, the man couldn't see the woman, so God had to split him in two, and that's how he got gender. but so that is the life. Well, so how about then the other woman, Earth? What's her story? So her story is that the Earth is a very special planet, like no other planet in the universe. Why is that? Because God wanted to be known and loved. So what is low to God? So it says there is a chair that sits upon creation, that the creator, who has no form, not physical, spiritual, nothing, comes and sits upon that chair, meaning that God lowers God's self to creation and picked up a pebble from the foot of that supernal chair, and that pebble became our Earth. And that's why our Earth is alive. Well, a different type of life than physical life. That's where the human life, stems from. It's like all creation it spans between God, who began it, and the human being. We're the two, everything else is like, one of these strings you can talk through. But, like we're the main thing, every human being, not just the good ones, not just the beautiful ones, not just the rich ones, every human being. And no one knows, which human being like God really digs, I mean, everyone could be running after a movie star, or a baseball player, or a politician, or some rich person, or there's all these different things that we think, well, this is just the greatest human being ever. But God doesn't look at it like that, because God's into the story, and each one of us is a story. And that's the story of woman. That's how these two women came to be, and between them, they created the human being, because in the world of Tohu, there was sex. There was this sense of even though everything was feminine, and so sex was not, it was there, but it was not activated. And even like in Jewish law, that if two women, are together, that's not considered a sexual action. It's just considered that women love each other. But it's not considered sex. Sex has to have a penis. And that's why the two women collaborated together, and through the letter Vav, which is just in a vertical line, they made the penis, and at the end of it, they put a hole that looks like the letter Yud, the first letter of God's name, Yud He Vav He, and that's what is considered nakedness in the Torah, is to reveal that Yud in the world. And then on the opposite, that's what we're supposed to do, because the whole point of the circumcision is to reveal the Yud. And both the Jewish and the Arab peoples, we are the direct descendants from Abraham, that we do that. And I must say, I take great disgust, really, the fact that in Milan, I guess it was, that I have myself standing in front of the famous statue of the David, and there he was with his sword and his slingshot, and he was naked, and he was uncircumcised. And it's that's a really that ain't a cool thing to do. In a sense, they covered up the Yud. It says a lot about Rome. Anyways, so that's what made the human being, and the human being was reduced down to maybe before or after, I actually don't know, was fitted down to like our size. And then a fire image of that was taken to Garden of Eden, which is beyond the Kuiper Belt. And the human being, the crude human being, was left. This is what we know as Nathan-Durall man. And eventually, 130 years later, the human being comes back, and the crude human being disappears, and begins the reign of a highly spiritual human being who could do amazing things. But each generation became lower and lower, and they couldn't recognize that. They recognized that God created creation, but they didn't recognize that, God's here. God left it in the hands of the stars. And they were very good at manipulating the starlight, and they could go through the heavens. They could do all sorts of shit. And we know that because this stuff is written down in the Zohar. Things, described exactly, can be nothing else than the outer planets of our solar system, which we didn't discover until a few hundred years ago. So, and that's how the knowledge, filtered down, eventually, got written down into the Zohar. And so the human being then began to populate the earth. That was the main thing to do. Pru populate the earth. And they did it to, because this is the first time now sexuality has been revealed. And it says that these guys were just so out of hand that they were taking other people's women, and they were ejaculating over everything. It says over the trees and the stones. And God finally said, man, I got to bring a flood and clean this place up. And that's what happened, and ended up with a few more moderate human beings. That's Noah and his descendants, the three sons. And so nonetheless, we're still developing, in our humanness. And, in a sense, we're free. But in a sense, we're not. We don't know what we're doing. And it says that at the very beginning of creation, that God said to a soul, if you'll go down there and receive the Torah, then I will continue creation until the 6,000th year. Right now, we're 5,781. And we'll continue it until the year 6,000, and then we'll begin 1,000 years of woman and 1,000 years of peace. So we're very close to all of that. And this crucial thing of receiving the Torah, that is what makes a person free. Not what it's not just going out and be able to do whatever you want. That's not free. That's like a free animal. But a free human being first is one who has control of his animal. And if you don't have control of your animal, you get thrown in jail. You can't stop your animal from drinking or from hurting people or from stealing. They throw you in jail. I don't agree with jail. I think there's much better ways to do it. But, the human being has to learn how to be in this world. But the Torah, which talks about the very beginning of creation, why God created it, why there was this soul that came down and eventually became the Jewish people, because we're the only ones who would accept to be chosen to do the 613 commandments. And those 613 commandments are considered like 613 threads, one silver and one gold. And the silver one has 248, like the 248 limbs, and the gold has the 365, like the 365 connecting tissues in the body. And it's interesting to observe in the outer 7 planets where there is life that the Earth goes around the sun 365 days, and Pluto, the furthest away, goes around the sun 248 years. Again, with the sum of 613. And added to that sum, the 7 commandments given to all peoples in the world, called the Noahide Commandments. Not to worship idols and not to use God's name in vain, not to murder, not to steal, to make laws about protecting the environment and animals, laws about sexuality to protect women and children, and courts of law to make sure there's justice. And that's what we're supposed to do. You do that, man, God loved you. And you add them to the 613, you come up to 620, which is Gematria Keter, which is the highest level in creation, means crown. And with that, that's how we crown the Creator. Then the Creator is king of the world. But until we do that, we're all a bunch of rebels. And leads us to the holiday of Passover. And Passover is more than just being an animal, than just being a human being, which we're all equal, we're equally unique, we all have like different, fingertips, fingerprints, and each one of us is unique from one another. And in that uniqueness really is our only real equality, that we are unique, and therefore we're each uniqueness is equal to every other uniqueness. It can't be a better uniqueness or a less. They're unique, and that's how God looks at each person, as a unique person with a unique story, because God's into the story. And that's the beauty of creation, because it says God created creation b'chachma. Chachma is the first aspect of intellect, where the soul comes into the brain, where we just see it. We're not quite sure what we see. And from that on, everything proceeds logically. That's the whole thing in the mind, that everything has to be logical or else, it ain't working. And that's the idea. God created b'chachma. Everything is logical. So we can see how these 2 women created, the one man, and how they both lived with the man, and through that created different entities. Lilith created all these spiritual entities, and Chava all the physical entities, and everything that there is, came from the human being, from this human being that was made from these 2 women. It's all very cool. And then Pesach is the time to get free. And that's air. And air is our capacity to breathe. But more than that, it's our capacity to speak. Because that's what separates the human being from the animal, is that we're able to articulate thoughts into speech. And animals, even though they can communicate, and there's some animals like parrots can even parrot the words, but there's no animal who can conceive a thought and then speak it out. It just, it doesn't happen, because that's one of the things about being an animal, is they don't have that capacity. And it's one of the things that, makes us different from the animals. And we can speak to the animals, and sometimes the animals can understand us, bone, or, go get your bone, and they understand that word means this, but they can't come back and say, hey man, here's the bone. Be pretty cool if they could, but that would then, we'd lose our distinction of being human. Either dogs would be human or we would be dogs. So thank God it didn't happen like that. And as Dovid praises God, saying that thank God, unlike all other mammals, you put women's breasts on their chest. And so it's more than than just the speech, but this is something that's one to give thanks, something to give thanks for. There's many things to give thanks for. And so in the time of Pesach, and now we're in the third day of Passover. There's 7 days. It ends Friday night on Shabbat, the 24 hours of Shabbat, and that's when we go through the sea. People stay up late and learn Torah. People can stay up until the morning. They throw water on the floor, and then people dance around it. And what are you supposed to do during the time of Pesach? So you're really supposed, these are called the intermediate days, where you're not like all fixated on prayer and not working. You're allowed to work if you want to work. I don't particularly want to work, and so you can do whatever you want to do. You can sleep later, not too much later, but you can sleep later, and you can, just hang out, do what you want, get high. And you can go out. I went out today and I bought myself a jacket, a really cool jacket, a suede jacket. So I just, these are called levushim, how we dress ourselves. And there's 3 levushim, there's 3 dressings of the soul. And it's, let me see, how do you say intellect? How can I forget this? The intellect, mochem, midot, maisim. That what we think, what we feel, and what we do. These are the 3 ways that the soul is able to interact in the world by shooting us thoughts. Of course, the brain is part of the animal; it has its own thoughts, and often it's hard for the soul to get through. And whatever is sort of contrived between the animal and the soul, so comes into the third eye, and we know something. Even as firstborns, we know something, and we respond. We have an emotion that then blossoms into an action. And it's interesting, the way that children come into this world is like this, with a clenched fist. I got it. And the way we all leave the world is with an open hand. Take it. And this is the world. And they say that there's a story about this fox. And this fox, he found the most luscious vineyard of grapes. The only thing, there was a wall all around it. So he found a little hole, and but in order to get into it, he had to fast. So he fasted and fasted, didn't eat for days, weeks. Finally got small enough he could go into the hole. And then he could start eating the grapes, which he did. And he ate and he ate and he ate until he just couldn't eat anymore, and it was time to go. And he went, and but he couldn't, of course, fit through the hole. So he had to fast again. He fasted, and they got on the other side. And that's really how life is, And the only thing you can really take with you are the good deeds you do, And it's not just in what we do, because God doesn't judge us according really to what we do, but according to what we intend to do, And like sometimes you could do a real good thing, but you didn't intend to do it. And it's like, it was like an accident. All right, you did it. And sometimes you really intend to do the right thing, but for whatever reason, it doesn't end up right, or you didn't get to manifest what you tried to do. And God says, that's all right, you tried to do it. And you're credited with trying to do things. So there's, once again, the Christian take on things is that, well, they say that hell is paved with good intentions. Well, there is no hell. And that's just completely wrong. Heaven is paved with good intentions. And so, one should not judge themselves too severely if they weren't able to manifest what they wanted to do. As long as they know in their heart that this is what I tried to do. I was trying to do a good thing, and it didn't work out. So, anyways, some nice little things from the Torah. God willing, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of 420. And in the meantime, don't forget, check out my my website, dovidhouse.com. It's where my books are available, particularly my most recent book, Sex, a Metaphor to History, Trump 777 and the 1,000 Years of Woman. And I also have a Udemy course there on how to read the tarot, which is goes through like the Esser Sfirot and all the things of the Tree of Life, because that's what the tarot is based upon. So, and with that, I can wish everyone a happy Passover. Just continue to be free, man. Free is like leaving the past behind. And at the Seder, we're supposed to drink 4 glasses of wine. So I always, I have problems, with the wine, particularly 4 glasses of it. So this time I went in and I asked the guy, because someone had given me some really good wine, a glass of really good wine. It didn't affect me at all. So I asked him, like, what's the difference? So he showed me a wine, like a $30 wine, which, he says, this is really good if you have a hard time drinking wine. And I looked at it, and it was 15% alcohol, which that's a lot. But I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, if there's not 15% alcohol, it means there's more sugar in there, and it's probably the sugar, because sugar really does me in. So, and I drank it, and it was really illuminating. I didn't have any bad effects from it whatsoever, but I sure felt like I forgot a lot of things, forgetting the last year was what it was. And now we're starting off a new year for the Jewish people. It's how we count our years is from the month of Nisan instead of the month of Tishrei. And yeah, so maybe next time I'll talk about how we're spiraling. I mentioned a little bit before. Anyways, thank you for joining me, and I'm happy to answer your questions, either live, or you can send me questions, and I'll do my best to try to answer them for you. I enjoy doing this. Enjoy being with you. And thank you very much. Stay high, man. This is a sign of Shaddai. Shin Daled Yud.